had to, sorry guys, I'm having technical difficulties because there's a storm and I had a live garden class planned for today. It was all blurry and not recording properly, so I had to exit out of the class, and when you do that, YouTube thinks you're done, and it got rid of, like I couldn't jump back in type thing, so I had to start a new live, so it's probably not connected to the other one and everything. The stream, it just says the stream has ended, and I know there's a couple people there. I don't know how to tell them to jump on over here on this live. Like, it doesn't even pull up the chat for me to tell everybody. Sometimes these things can be a little annoying, but anyways, hopefully they'll find their way over here now. So sorry about that. Normally these things work out just fine, and I never have any problems. Let me know now in the chat if you guys can see me and hear me clearly. Hopefully that helped before we begin here. Where's my live? I try to get it on my second phone here. Why isn't it letting me? I have no idea. No idea what's going on. It won't show me whatever live I'm on right now. All good? All right. No idea what's going on. I like to have the second phone to see the chat and see your questions. It's just so much easier than on the phone. I have to like scroll through it on here, but it's not even letting me jump on my own live. Okay, anyways, let's get started. Y'all are here. Oh, thank you, Jennifer, for letting me know that that's what YouTube did. And it told everyone that there's a second and that I'm loud and clear. Thank you, Russell. All right. Thanks for letting me know, guys. That's the first time I've had to jump off like that and just like end it. But anyways, today's class is about garden irrigation. I usually ask you all, what do you guys want to learn about? And if I see kind of like a common theme or topic, that's usually what I go with. So I saw a couple people mention that they had different questions about irrigation type related stuff. So I was like, let's make this class about garden irrigation. And perfect timing because we're going into summer. A lot of people in the United States have drought during the summer, or water restrictions and different things going on. Or if you're in the opposite type of situation, like if you're in Florida, we enter our rainy season. So that means it's a great time to capture that rain. So you could use it in other parts of the year, our dry season that we have, which right now is supposed to be our dry season, but the weather, it looks like it's going to rain right now. That's why I'm actually in my screen porch doing this class. I really wanted to be out in the garden and show you guys some irrigation stuff that I have set up. I just set up a new IBC tote and connected it to my home's gutter system to collect water. And actually I just posted a YouTube video yesterday showing you all about that, like all the materials, supplies, how I did it, things to consider, all of that when using an IBC tote to collect rainwater. So if I can't show it to you today, I'm hoping maybe the weather will clear up towards the end of the class. I'm not really sure what to expect, or it could get worse. I don't know. It is like drizzling a little bit and I can hear thunder, no lightning as of yet, but if it clears up, we'll definitely go out into the garden. I'll show you that. But if I can't, there is that video from yesterday where I showed the IBC tote setup and everything. One time I was doing a live class and the weather got so bad it was lightning and I had to just end the class, like I couldn't be out here. So just letting you guys know things can happen. So while I was putting this class together, there's a lot of information. There's so many different ways and methods of garden irrigation that I ended up splitting this into 2 classes. So I try to do 1 live class a month. Today's class specifically is about rainwater collection, how to do it, different methods, things to consider. And I had a question from one of my viewers to just chat a little bit about what if you don't have access to well water or city water or have a pond or something. They have a community garden, I guess just on some land that doesn't have any like water connections, resources, stuff like that. So I will be talking about that as well, just some ideas if you're in that similar situation. And just so you know, you can ask me questions during this class. If you do, please put in the comment your question along with your garden zone and what state or country you're located in, just to help me gauge a little better your climate and answer the question as best as I can. But just some reminders real quick before we get into it. Right now, Memorial Day is on Monday. I always do some sort of a sale for Memorial Day. So on my website, jarrahsgarden.com, if you buy one plant, you get to pick out of a list of second plants that you get 50% off. So it's like a buy one, get one 50% off. No codes required, nothing like that. I will also be at the American Farmstead Convention this Saturday, May 31st. It's in Green Cove. I forget the name of the city. Honestly, I've never been there before, but it's like 20-30 minutes outside of St. Augustine, Florida. It's actually the very first time that I have ever gone to an event, and we'll have my booth and tables, and I'll have all my seeds and plants. You guys can shop in person and come say hi and meet me and chat with me for a little bit. I don't do events and stuff like that because I have a full-time job on top of all of this, so my weekends are really sacred to me, and to find the time to do an event is very hard. But they invited me to their convention, and I said sure. It sounded like a lot of fun. It's not just gardening, it's homesteading type topics, working with the land, farm animals, lots of presentations. So yeah, I'll just be there on Saturday, May 31st. And again, the name is the American Farmstead Convention. Also, these garden classes are completely spontaneous. There's no like set time and schedule. The best way to find out about them is to join my email group, because I will send out an email with the next class, the time and date, and all of that kind of stuff. Also, in this class description, so it's in the description of the class I had to end to restart this due to technical difficulties. I will copy and paste everything into this one. When this class is over, all of this will upload to my YouTube channel under the live chat tab, and you can rewatch it, or if you missed something or whatever, you can rewatch it. And in the description, I will put in there links to all the supplies, things I may have mentioned, that kind of thing, so you all know where to go find it. So the descriptions of all my videos are full of like tons of links and referrals and whatever, so you guys can find things. And so next month's class for June, hopefully the weather is a little better, it will be continuing the theme of garden irrigation, and I'm hoping I could show you guys my drip irrigation setup. It is connected to city water, my house water, through a spigot, and all the pieces that go with it, and how I put it together, and just things to consider for that. But today is focusing more on just collecting rainwater. Jennifer's asking also how to irrigate containers. That goes along with both of these classes. The irrigation for containers, you can irrigate with that rainwater, or you can irrigate with your city water. It just depends how you're connecting it and the pieces that you're using for your containers. I grow a lot of my heirloom tomatoes in grow bags, so technically a container, because I like to fill it with like straight compost and give them a lot of nutrients and stuff like that. So the grow bags or containers are really good for growing tomatoes. And I had to figure out how to irrigate all of those separate little containers. So I already had a drip irrigation system installed, and I was able to get a drip line, or like a main line, and these like emitters, they're spray emitters, to feed each container. So that's how I did it that way. Now the source of the water is going to differ depending on what you decide to do, but that's really the only option you have for containers. You run out a main line that brings the water from your water source to where all your containers are, and then you have individual like emitters that you install or poke into that main line to feed all of your containers. And I actually have 2 YouTube videos about drip irrigation. The first one is how I installed my main drip irrigation system. I think that's like a 2-year-old video, because I've had the system for a while. And then the second one is kind of expanding upon that, and how it shows you how I irrigate the containers with the spray fans. Emitters is what they're called. And also using automatic water timers that I can control with an app on my phone. So if I go on vacation or something, I could still irrigate my garden. So that's usually a big hurdle for a lot of people. They don't want to get into gardening because you're like, how am I going to take care of this if I go on vacation or whatever happens? Automate everything. Trust me, you can make it so simple, save yourself tons of hours. I even use my drip irrigation system to fertilize my plants with liquid fertilizers in a mixing tank and everything. So really, really great. I should have installed that from the very beginning of when I started gardening here about 8 or 9 years ago. But yeah, so I do have 2 classes. I will be posting links to all of that in the description when I'm done with this class and I can get to it. And then I had the video from yesterday about the IBC tote system to collect water. But anyways, hello from Florida. I'm Zone 10A, Orlando, Florida, in case y'all didn't know. I specialize mostly in hot climate gardening, but we grow all of the same stuff here that, you know, people more north of me or in colder climates grow as well. It's just the timing when I would grow it is very different compared to someone in a colder climate, but the way to grow a crop is the same no matter where you're located. The method, the technique, the harvesting, all of that kind of stuff is the same. It's just the timing of when you'll plant it will be different. So I can speak to gardening no matter where you're located at this point. But and this is Teddy. He'll cry if I leave him in the house. So he's out here with me while I do the class. Hopefully he doesn't get afraid of this storm. But anyways, let's get into it. The first thing I want to talk about are the benefits to collecting rainwater. So every time it rains, you can collect and store water, and it's a free resource, so you don't have to pay. Teddy, hey, he's like scratching something. I have a pretty substantial size garden. I don't feel like my water bill is crazy or nothing like that. So at least, hey, I'm in Florida. We have a lot of water here, so I'm not to say that water isn't an expensive thing, like maybe in California or other places that have not as much, water as a resource, and it's more expensive there and stuff like that. So I'm sure that can be a concern for people. Just how much is it going to cost me to water my garden all the time? So if you can collect this resource for free, even better, right? And or if you just have a really big garden. If you have a big garden, then yeah, you're going to want to cut down on that water bill a little bit. Rainwater is also better for plants in general, unless you live in some really crazy polluted area where when it rains, it also pushes, mixes with the pollution in the air and then it goes all over the place on your garden. But in general, most of us don't live in very polluted areas like that. And rainwater it's soft water and it's chemical free, unlike city water that has chlorine in it and whatever other things. And sometimes well water too can get like contaminated and stuff like that. And also when it rains, it pulls nitrogen from the atmosphere and it gets mixed in that rainwater and it fertilizes your plants a little bit too. So I don't know if you've noticed after it rains and you walk out in your garden, everything just kind of looks a little lush or something. Yeah, they're getting a little bit of a nitrogen boost from that rainwater. So also collecting your own rainwater, you could save it for when your drought seasons come, when the water restrictions start getting in place and stuff like that. I wanted to I just installed an IBC tote, which holds 275 gallons of water onto a downspout for my home's gutter system. It was super easy to do, and it filled up with water in like 2 days. I was shocked. I wasn't expecting the rain already, but it did. It filled up the whole thing, and now I have water to use whenever I want. Or I'm probably going to save it for the dry season because we're about to go in a rainy season where it rains here almost every day, so I'm not really using water that much. I pretty much don't water the garden at all during that time. But definitely towards the end of fall and then going into spring, we enter our dry season here. If you are entering a dry season now in summer, set up that rainwater collection as soon as you can. And if you get any, even if it's a small amount of rain, now or whatever, that's going to help you get through the rain restrictions. I just heard thunder there. If you are an off-grid gardener, or you're trying to be more self-sufficient in that kind of thing, or you're gardening an area that doesn't have access to, you know, a well water, a pond, or anything like that, like the person who had asked me to talk about that a little bit, really your only option is to collect rainwater in that case. You can collect that rainwater in the middle of an open field in the middle of nowhere and use that for your garden. All right, so let's talk about the different methods to collect rainwater, because there's so many ways. And these are just some of the ideas that I could just think of off the top of my head. But get creative. Like, you can reuse things. You can find stuff on Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace. There's a million different things you can use to collect rainwater. Let me stop real quick and look at the comments. Like I said, I will stop and just answer your questions. Julian asked, how do we know when compost is done? That's going to depend on a lot of factors. So when you make a compost pile, the hotter it gets, the faster it's going to decompose. Typically, I hear, just standard, it's going to take like a year or two for that to like completely decompose down into soil. I think when it stops feeling really hot to the touch, or like steaming, that's a good indicator that, you know, it's done, because if there's not all that decomposition happening, it's not generating that heat anymore. So you'll just notice that it doesn't feel as hot anymore to the touch and the steam and everything. But it does take a while to do that. If you could heat up your compost pile, some people will put like tarps over it and that kind of thing. That will help speed up the process. It also depends the type of material you're throwing into it to make that compost. Some things decompose fast, some things decompose take longer. So it all depends, but usually a good indicator is the way that it looks. Does it look like fine dirt? Is everything, you know, fine particles at this point, and that it's not as hot anymore. Jennifer's asking, is rainwater collected from an asphalt shingle roof safe for watering edible plants? I actually did not look that up. I'm just being honest with you guys. I personally don't think it's that big of an issue, especially when you're watering the plants. I mean, it also depends on your setup, but my garden wraps around my house. So all of the rain that falls on my roof will fall down into the soil that I'm growing things in anyways. I'm sure it probably carries with it some of the ingredients used to build my roof. I think I also have that kind of a roof, I think. I don't know. But I mean, I haven't noticed anything odd happening in my garden from that water, and things here get soaked with the water from my roof. It floods parts of my gardens and stuff like that. But that is something, you know, you should look into. I would say you have to know for sure what kind of roof you have, what kind of materials and things were used to make it, to be able to figure out if it's a problem. But I have not heard that it's a problem for people. What I have heard it being a problem when you collect rainwater is the containers and the pipes and stuff that you're using, if they're not food grade, or if you're using an IBC tote that maybe held some sort of a chemical before you started using it to collect rainwater. That is really bad, and it will like leach out and get into everything. Another thing to consider too, if are you going to use this rainwater just to irrigate plants, or are you going to try to drink from it too? Now that is a whole different thing. If you're going to drink from it, definitely rainwater coming off from your roof is not going to be good for you to just straight up and drink. You would have to also filter the water out and have different ways of doing your system. My system here at home is purely just to irrigate the plants. So it's not wetting my fruit that I'm going to be consuming either and stuff like that. So personally, I feel that it's completely fine and safe to use for that purpose. But anyways, let's get into some different ideas. And I'm just curious, for those of you that are here and watching, do any of you have any rainwater collection systems already installed in your home? If so, what did you do? What did you use? What kind of material? Did you reuse a bathtub? I don't know. Just let me know, because some people have really unique, great ideas on how to do this, more so than what I could come up with. So if you do, just put it in the chat, share with everyone else kind of what you did. Jackie's asking, I'm really having a problem to know a good fertilizer for all plants, not just certain plants. So fertilizers, I had another live class. I think it was the one right before this one. It was the one last month. I talked all about fertilizers. So I encourage you to go check that class out. But when it comes to fertilizers, they're all the same. They technically, chemically speaking, they're all the same. Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, whatever, some trace minerals, whatever. I choose the fertilizer that I'm going to use based on the plant stage of what I'm growing. So, for example, if you're growing something just to eat its leafy greens, the leaves, that's it. It's not forming a fruit like a tomato or something like that. That particular plant, the focus is those leafy greens. So you're going to fertilize with something that will promote the growth and everything of the leafy green. And the best thing for that is something high in nitrogen. Whether you use something synthetic or something organic, I really like to use blood meal, which is an organic high nitrogen source on all my leafy greens. That's what you want. You're going to pick a fertilizer based on that. If you're planting and growing a fruiting crop like a tomato, squash, zucchini, peppers, that kind of thing, now you're not growing it to eat its leaves, you're growing it to eat its fruit. You have to support the flowering stage properly, and then therefore you will get better and more quality fruit and that kind of thing. Not the leafy stuff so much. And actually, if you give it too much nitrogen, which will make it focus its energy on growing lots of leafy greens, it will take away its focus and energy from producing the flowers, which will then later give you the fruit. So with those kinds of crops, whenever you see that they're starting to flower at the beginning, you're going to lean off the nitrogen and go more into the phosphorus and potassium. How you decide to do that just depends. What do you find at the store? What's easy for you to access and find? One of my favorites is a tomato formulated fertilizer, because they always usually have lower nitrogen and higher phosphorus and potassium for that reason. And I will use that on my peppers, any kind of fruiting thing, same deal. It doesn't matter that it's a tomato fertilizer, it's the composition of the nutrients, and you can use that for any kind of a fruiting crop. And you would start using that at the first signs of flowering and going forward from there. So that's what you want to learn, what each nutrient does and how to select the correct nutrient for the crop that you're growing. That's more important. And then it doesn't matter what brand, what kind, blah, blah, blah. I personally like a lot of organic stuff, so I stick and lean more towards the organic type of fertilizers and stuff like that. But that's the game plan. Don't go and like buy a tomato fertilizer, an avocado fertilizer, like the different kinds of formulations and all of that. No, look at the makeup of the nutrients. Tia uses a rain barrel. That is a very popular choice. It's just easy, as a consumer, to go to the store and find a rain barrel. They're easy to carry around and install and that kind of thing. The only downfall with the rain barrels is they tend to be kind of small, so they don't hold like as much water as maybe you might need. It depends. Maybe you have a smaller garden, that kind of thing, to where it's enough. But definitely, probably the majority of people have rain barrels. Michelle is saying she has a rain barrel, but the drip line isn't working great for the drip line. I think I need to raise the barrel up. And that is exactly when I started reading this, the first thing that came to mind is the water pressure coming out of your rain barrel. You probably have a spigot on it, is not enough to make your drip irrigation line work. So that's something you have to think about and calculate before you choose, your rain collection setup. And that is, if you have a drip irrigation system, a kit, whatever that you're using, you have to know the PSI that it requires and the gallons per hour usually, so you can make sure that whatever the water source is will meet that. So work backwards from there. Know what your drip irrigation system is going to need, and then make your rainwater collection, rain barrel, whatever, fit that. To do that, most people will raise their whatever water collection thing you're using up high. The higher that you can raise it, the better, the more pressure you're going to get out of and flow out of the spigot to make your drip irrigation lines work. I don't know the exact calculations, like how many feet off the ground will give you X amount of like water pressure and that kind of thing. I'm sure there's ways to calculate it. But yeah, that is something you will have to calculate to ensure that that rainwater collection system will be compatible with your drip irrigation system. And yeah, so you have to raise it up. Another thing you might want to consider, although I personally have not used this device, but there's a device, I think it's called like a booster or something. It sounds to me like it would need some kind of electric power to run this device, but it boosts the pressure, PSI, whatever, that comes out of that spigot or your system so that it will work better with the drip irrigation. Rosalind is asking, is compost and manure interchangeable? They're not the same. They're not. One is compost, which is usually a mix of manures and greens and wood and like whatever stuff. And then manure is manure. They're not interchangeable. Manure tends to usually require more time to decompose down. However, I think it's also kind of misleading because, for example, I go to Home Depot and I buy the cheapest compost I can find, and it says like cow manure on it, but it's not straight cow manure. I could see sticks and stuff from them making this compost with the manure, so that doesn't mean that it's just like straight manure. But usually straight manures it depends how old it is, because it also needs to decompose down for a little bit. If it's hot and it's still decomposing, it'll burn your plants when you apply it. So, but that also depends on what kind. Like I think like chicken manures and like rabbit manures are real safe for you to like immediately put out to your plants without having to like mix it up or compost it down. But then other manures like from cows and stuff like that need time to like break down and whatever. So it all depends. And if you don't have space to do your own compost, then I mean you don't, there's other things you can do. You can compost in place. You're not the only one. I mean, a lot of people with small, I'm in a small neighborhood, and you don't have the space to have a huge compost pile or whatever. I do a lot of composting in place. So my kitchen scraps or whatever stuff, I will throw or like dig into the soil of my raised garden beds and that kind of thing, so that eventually it composts down and gets added into the soil. I also will add, compost bags that I find from Home Depot or whatever, sometimes like a top layer to top off my raised beds after the season. You can grow a lot of plants, or maybe you already have plants, bushes, trees, leaves, whatever, grass clippings that you can collect from your property and also work that into the soil of your garden, and that will decompose down. Another resource, something that I rely personally heavily on, is wood chips, because I can get that for free in large quantity. I usually do put a request in on chipdrop.com. I think it's chipdrop. I don't know the exact website, but it's chipdrop. And I'll put a request in there and they'll come deliver me a huge mountain of wood chips. And I will spread that all over my garden. I've been doing that for years now, and it's decomposted down and built up a really big, thick layer of good soil in my garden, which is, if you're in Florida, we have native sandy soil. That stuff does not hold on to organic material. With all the rains and stuff that we get, it like leaches out of the soil. So you might put like a little bit of compost at the beginning of the season, and by the end of the season it's back to like dirt, and you're like, what happened here? Well, because the rains and everything, it just kind of sifts and falls out. I don't know how to explain it. So you constantly have to be like throwing stuff, building the soil, whatever. So for me, the easiest thing to do that was just get massive amounts of wood chips, and it's a free resource, at least for me. So yeah, every year and a half, something like that, we will put like a thick layer of wood chips, and I have a YouTube video all about that as well, and how I use it in my garden and things to consider and stuff like that. Leaf mold is a great option as well. I believe leaf mold, it's mold, and it's like lots of bacteria, microbiology, mycorrhizae, all of that stuff. So when you use that, you are adding that into your soil, which is super important that you build that up in your soil too. It's not just good enough to like have a nice looking soil. Maybe it looks dark and black and rich, but it has no life in it. Like the plants, like each plant, their root systems have a relationship with the mycorrhizal network in the soil and that kind of thing. And that's how a lot of plants get nutrients, is like it's broken down by the mycorrhizal network and the beneficial bacteria and all that stuff, and transported into the plant. So you might get like a load of some fresh compost or whatever, and you're like, my plants aren't really growing that well in this. Well, it needs time to like adjust and have that mycorrhizal network grow it within it too. This is actually the situation I'm having at my second garden on my aunt's property. We started building that like in January of this year, and she had like a natural dip in her property, like a big one, and it was like maybe 2 or 3 feet deep. So I was like, instant garden bed right there. I didn't even have to dig anything or build a raised garden bed. So we decided to fill in that dip with a whole bunch of like compost that I bought in bulk, and it was delivered with a tractor, and they came and like pushed it in place and all that. Great. But everything that I've planted in there just does not look happy. And I know it's because that soil is new and needs time to like finish breaking down. The mycorrhizal network, bacteria, all of that stuff needs to form. I also don't encourage tilling the garden. I am no-till, because then you're breaking apart all those layers of all those beneficials and all of that, and that's not good. That's me personally. I am doing cover cropping this year extensively, and when I terminate that cover crop, I will have to till in that instance, which is fine. That's what you got to do. But then after that, I am not tilling anymore. Loud plane coming through. But anyways, that was a tangent there. If you have slugs in your garden, I don't have slugs in my garden, but I hear this all the time from other gardeners, that slugs are an issue. And they make like beer traps, because I guess the scent of the beer attracts them. They fall in the liquid and they drown. So that's a great option. Or using diatomaceous earth. It's a powder. It's very fine. You sprinkle it at the base of your plants, and when the slugs and snails or any soft-bodied pest or insect crawls over that, it cuts them all up and like dries them out dead. So those are the two things that I'm aware of that work really well for managing the slugs. Sarah's asking if she could plant okra right now, or are you too late? Can you let me know where you're located and like your city and state and garden zone? That it all depends on that. I can't answer that question without knowing. For most people, it's okras. If you're past your last spring frost date or danger of frost, you can go ahead and direct sow seeds for okra. You're not late. The concern would be if you're in a colder climate where you don't have like 3 or 4 months in a row. Like let's say you direct sowed the seeds for okra today. You're going to need at least 4, maybe even 5 months for it to grow, for you to harvest. The planes are loud today. I'm kind of close to the airport, by the way, so these planes are super annoying, especially when I'm trying to film my YouTube videos. I have to constantly stop because of the planes. But what was I saying? Dude, okra. If you have a good 4 or 5 months left of warm weather, where you're in Florida. Sarah's in Florida. Okay, you're fine. Go ahead and direct sow seeds for okra right now. You have 4 or 5, probably more months in a row of warm weather without like getting your first frost or something like that, for you to grow it and enjoy multiple harvesting off from those plants. So yeah, you're fine. You're not late with that. Beer traps are illegal in Denmark. No way. I can't tell if that's a joke or not. What's the best way to get rid of Asian lady beetles? Okay, so I have a little knowledge about the Asian lady beetles. All that I know is that it's a type of ladybug that is bad for some reason, but I don't remember why they were bad. I honestly don't. And I would not be surprised if I had them in my garden, but I have not noticed any damage or diseases or anything because of the ladybug. And I say that because I have tons of ladybugs in my garden. A lot. So I would not be surprised if there were some here, some of the Asian ones. But I don't know how to get rid of them if they are an issue for you. Anyways. All right. That's it for questions. Let's keep going. I was just going to give you guys real quick just different ideas and ways of collecting rainwater. I had mentioned that I used an IBC tote. All right, before I keep going, let me answer Jamie's question. Do you have experience with dragon fruit? I'm in Arizona and thinking of giving it a go. Yes. Dragon fruit is a great option. I actually sell plants on my website because it is, I think, super easy to grow. It is technically a cactus. You're eating the flower of this cactus that forms the fruit. They're very drought tolerant, hard to kill once established. You don't really have any pest problems, diseases, stuff like that. I mean, they're like a cactus, so really easy to grow. The only thing I would say about growing dragon fruit, there's lots of different varieties out there. Make sure you do your research before you select whatever kind you decide to go with, because some are self-fertile, but most are not self-fertile. So what that means is you will have to manually go out there. I think they bloom at night. I haven't had one bloom yet. You will have to manually go out there and hand pollinate the flowers to get the fruit every single time, or you're not going to get any fruit, and that's super annoying. I don't want to do that. So make sure you select the ones that are self-fertile, that don't require that. They're constantly coming out or trying to breed new varieties that are self-fertile, because a lot of people don't like that thing about them. So whatever one you buy, make sure it's self-fertile. That'll save you a lot of effort and stuff. And dragon fruit also needs some kind of support. It's kind of like a floppy kind of plant. So look up some dragon fruit. There's lots of builds. Usually people will make like a tall wood pillar of some sort with a square at the top, so it will grow up that pillar and then fan out at the bottom with all its branches. That's pretty standard, like probably the best way to grow them. But other than that, they're very easy to grow, and they will thrive very well in a hot climate like in Arizona. Oh, Psycho, if I said that correctly. Thank you for letting me know. So I do not have them for sure, because I don't have things eating the leaves of everything, and that really sucks. And I'll have to do research on that to see what are people doing to combat that. If they're eating the leaves of everything, I don't know. It sounds like there has to be some kind of a spray or a treatment that you would have to use to get rid of those if they're eating the leaves of things. I'll have to look into that. Sorry, I don't have experience with that one yet. Oh, okay. That's awesome that you have a husband that will help you build the trellis. I'm the one that has to build everything. My husband's really good at other things, but he's not handy. And I'm not handy either at all. But gardening has made me learn so many things that I never thought I would learn. I can build a raised garden bed out of wood. I can install an IBC tote system. I eventually started getting into bees and chickens, so building the coop and blah, 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 all that stuff. But yeah, those kind of dragon fruit trellis, they're not hard to build. Like, I know I could do one myself. If someone showed me like a plan, I'd be like, okay, I can do that. Yes, Tia, the dragon fruit that I have on my website are self-fertile, because that is important to me. I don't want to sell any of the ones where you manually have to pollinate them. So right now, I think I might have a couple left for the yellow. It's called yellow dragon fruit. And that's it that I have right now. I'm trying to get more, but it's really hard for me to propagate things. I'm a micro nursery, guys. I'm not some big company. I don't have a ton of employees. So when I have stuff available, it tends to sell out quick because I don't have like high amounts of things. So if you see it on there, grab it. Okay, so let's keep going. Ideas. I had mentioned I used an IBC tote. The reason why I went with that is because I didn't want to get like rain barrels that hold little amounts of water. I wanted one big thing and just install it. So the IBC tote fit that. And it's very easy to just connect it to my gutter system that I had existing on my home, or you can connect it on your shed, on your garage, on a greenhouse, like a chicken coop, whatever. If you can put a gutter system on there, you can collect that water off from the roof of that building. So they're more ideal for gardeners with larger spaces or that need, more water. You just add mesh, different kinds of sizes of mesh filters and screens to make sure no debris ends up getting into the IBC tote. And of course, with all rainwater collection systems, you do got to raise them up off the ground. Mine is risen off the ground with a couple layers of like those concrete blocks with, I think they're 8-inch by 8-inch by 16. So we made a couple layers of that and we put the IBC tote on top of that. So very quick. That was a really quick project to put together. Didn't require crazy amounts of tools or anything like that. That video was posted yesterday. So if you want to see more in depth how I did it or what was used, go check that video out. Standard rain barrels are a beginner friendly option. They typically are much more easier to connect than an IBC tote or something like that. And they're great for smaller gardens or patios, and you can link multiple ones together, including the IBC totes, if you want to expand upon your system and that kind of thing. And just make sure if you go with a rain barrel that you pick one that has a spigot outlet at the bottom, so that you can connect, water hoses, drip irrigation, and that kind of thing. Another idea for you all are trash cans. If you're going to be consuming the water yourself, make sure you're using food grade everything, including the trash can, including the connections. My IBC tote system, I got that rain water gutter extension stuff that kind of looks like an accordion. Super cheap, very easy to work with. I didn't need tools or nothing, and I just cut it with an X-Acto knife. But that's not food safe. So if I only plan on using the water to irrigate my garden. But if you plan on drinking it, I would go with PVC pipes and that kind of thing. But I don't know anything about that. So that's why I went with the gutter extension type material. But definitely, if you plan on drinking this water in any way or, consuming it, make sure everything that it comes in contact is food safe. So a lot of people will get trash cans and just repurpose those or other kinds of similar containers. Make sure you put a screen at all the openings. You can buy spigot little attachments and cut a hole in a trash can and put a spigot. You can use rain chains and catchment basins. They tend to be real pretty and decorative and that kind of thing. But those are usually more so for like the smaller scale types of rainwater collection. I wonder if it still looks stormy outside. I still want to go outside and stuff, but it still doesn't look happy out there. So we'll wait a little bit. You can use a tarp and funnel system, which is what a lot of off-grid or remote like gardeners like to do. So they'll use like a large tarp or canopy or like tent to direct water into a bin. So that's an option if you don't have some sort of a roof to help you collect your water with. Another thing with the IBC totes, which I've seen people do, is you can get the tote, put it in the middle of the field or whatever, and they sell like these big round funnel type things that you put at the top of the IBC tote, and it will just collect the water that falls into that. Teddy, come on. And that's a great option, but I was looking at those things online. They're expensive. Those round things are expensive. And I'm sure you can use all sorts of other materials or reuse stuff to make yourself some big round funnel to divert that water into an IBC tote or something like that. I was in Home Depot the other day and I saw like trash can lids, maybe something like that. There's some circular thing that you can just cut a hole in and affix it to your, whatever you're using to collect the water. Some people will build like storage containers underground type setups. Those are much more expensive and that kind of thing, but they'll last forever and they hold a lot of water, and they tend to be able to be like connected to filters and that kind of stuff, so you could use it in your home and all that kind of thing. And lastly, something that I've done at my second garden on my aunt's property. She has a couple acres in St. Cloud, and we've been building gardens there and stuff and whatever. And towards the back end of her property, she has a lot of like just open land that's not being used for anything. So that's where we wanted to build our garden at. However, I could not connect to a water source back there, but she did have a big pond. Like, they actually built this pond there. They like dug it out like 30 years ago, but it refills with water, the natural rain that we get here in Florida and that kind of thing, and it doesn't ever go dry. So I researched and found a 2 horsepower pump. I don't remember what kind of pump it's called, but you turn the pump on, it has a suction, it's connected to a hose, and that hose runs all the way down to the water of the pond. And then at the end of that hose piece in the pond is a big like barrel thing that's a filter. So it'll at least suck the water out of the pond, but it'll go through a little bit of filtering before it goes up into the pump itself, where there's like a spigot attachment on that pump. So I just connect my water hose or I ended up connecting my drip irrigation system to it, just like any other spigot. And that is how we're irrigating that whole massive garden that we built over there. And so far it's working okay, but the pump is starting to give me some issues right now. I'm not 100% sure what it is, and I'm not handy or crafty like that, but I will have to go there and like pull everything apart and just take a look at it. I hope it didn't burn out or something. But that made me think, like, what if this pond pump broke one day? Like, what am I going to do? So I got 2 other IBC totes, and I do plan on, she has a shed that is close to the garden. I'm going to install one there on a gutter system, and the other one I'm going to install on its own with some sort of funnel type thing on the top to collect rainwater as a backup, because that pump, I don't know, and it's brand new, it's heavy duty, it's like all metal, but I don't know, that just triggered in me, like, if that broke down for whatever reason, my garden would quickly die, like within a few days, without having some sort of water back there. So really good to have these things as backup if you can. All right, let me answer some questions. Joyful Paradise, my tomato plants have succumbed to some kind of disease. I'm cutting leaves, branches left and right, and they seem to be spreading from one plant to another. What can you do to save your tomatoes? Okay, Joyful Paradise, if you can, please let me know where you're located, city, state, and garden zone. But I'm just gonna be honest with you guys. Like, whenever I grow a lot of things, right? Usually the tomatoes, cucumbers, melons, that type of stuff, they catch all sorts of diseases, all of them. All right, I gave up like trying to identify exactly what it is. More often than not, it's like blight or some kind of bacterial thing, or mold, or like powdery mildew. Most often it's like those 3. But in Florida, we get them all. Like, we're in a humid climate. These pathogens that cause plant diseases spread like crazy all over the place. It is part of gardening here in Florida. Like, there's no garden in Florida that you're going to garden and not get them. So instead of getting like frustrated trying to identify what exactly it is and what you need to do, I spray everything with 1 cup of 3% hydrogen peroxide per gallon of water. I put it, dang, I thought I had my sprayer. I don't have it here. It's a handheld sprayer thing. And I fill the container up. It's one of those hose end mixer sprayers. Kind of like, you know how Miracle Grow has that hose end sprayer where you like pour the Miracle Grow granules, whatever, in it and close it, and it will like mix it at whatever ratio you dial in. It's one of those things, not the Miracle Grow one, but it's one of those. I fill it up with the 3% hydrogen peroxide, and then I can dial it to, I think it's 8 ounces is 1 cup per gallon of water. So it will automatically just mix it, and I douse my plants in it. So hydrogen peroxide, what does that do? It cleans and disinfects. It kills a lot of pathogens, molds, bacteria, fungus. Usually it's molds and funguses that cause the majority of the plant diseases you're going to see on the surface of the leaves. It kills them all of them, right? We use it, humans use it to treat and disinfect wounds, right? Well, it does the same thing for pathogens on plants. So that is my go-to. Like, just don't get so frustrated and worried trying to figure out like what you have. If it's something on the surface of the leaves, it's some pathogen that's spreading on the surface of the leaves. So just douse your plants in that hydrogen peroxide stuff, and it will clean and disinfect. Repeat this every 3 to 5 days until you start seeing like the spread has decreased. And trust me, you'll know. Like if you walk in your garden every day and look at your plants, you'll know, oh, they're getting better or whatever's happening. So do that. You need to treat, disinfect like whatever pathogens out there. And then once you see like it's kind of stopped, then you're good to go. Sorry, I'm like scrolling through the comments to get back where I was. I did not know Jackie at Wild Floridian buys seeds for me. My assistant packs all my orders now. Like it's too much. Like I just couldn't keep up with it. So she does that. She's actually my brother's girlfriend. So she's my assistant. And she packs all the orders. So I don't see like the names and stuff or anymore to know like, oh, that person, you know, whatever. But that's cool. That's cool to know. Sarah, I'm confused. You're asking, do I ever grow palm trees? I don't. I kind of have the philosophy, I don't grow anything unless it is beneficial in some way. Like most of the time it's providing something edible or maybe medicinal or a benefit to like the pollinators or something. So for me, palm trees, unless it's a coconut palm, are pretty useless. Like, I don't know, unless it's a naturally occurring palm tree on your property. Like we're in Florida, of course I have some palm trees, but I did not plant those here. My neighborhood association, whatever, planted some as the landscaping of the neighborhood. And then when I bought this house, there was some in the landscaping in the front of the house, and they're there. But I willingly would not be planting palm trees. But there's tons of people that love them, so that's okay and cool if you do. Jamie's saying that she bought some Tromboncino repicante seeds for me. Do I treat it just like a zucchini? Yeah, pretty much. Okay, Jamie, I'm sorry. Maybe I asked before, where are you located? I think you said you're in Florida, but I'm sorry. I can't remember in the comments. But Tromboncino repicante, I have a whole YouTube video dedicated to that plant. I think I listed it in March, something like that. It's not too far back if you go through my videos. I love that thing. If you grow it, it's like a baseball bat sized squash. It is. If you harvest it while it's in its green stage, the skin is really thin and edible. So you use it just like you would any kind of summer squash. Summer squashes are like zucchinis and yellow squash and that kind of thing. Winter squashes, and I'm just bringing this up because someone just asked me this like yesterday. They didn't know the difference between a summer squash and a winter squash. So summer squashes are all the ones that have thin skins that you can eat the whole thing, like zucchini and yellow squash and stuff like that. Winter squashes are the ones that have hard rinds, like butternut squash or a pumpkin or something like that. And they're called winter squash only because they're typically grown to store food during the winter because they're hard rind. They can store for months. I don't know, 3-6 months. Some things like Seminole pumpkins can store for a year. So that's why they're called winter squash. But that doesn't mean you have to grow them during the winter. You would grow them at the same time you would grow all your other squash. Days to harvest. Days to harvest from direct sowing the seed of a Tromboncino repicante or transplanting, but I usually always direct sow the seed. It's going to take about 3 months, 90 days for you to start seeing some kind of production on there if grown in ideal conditions. Oh, Sarah, the palm tree thing, that makes sense now. They do sell specific fertilizers for palm trees. Now, because I'm not familiar with like growing them and like what's best for a palm tree, I'm not going to make any kind of recommendations there, but go with a fertilizer formulated for the palm trees then. That's what I would do if I had a palm tree. Oh, you're in Phoenix. Okay. I'm just seeing these comments. Sorry, I have to like scroll through them and everything. Okay, so you're in Phoenix. Jamie's in Phoenix. I I'm a little iffy because you definitely can try to grow the tromboncino during your summer. But you probably get really extreme heat like I do here in Orlando, Florida, like days where it's 100 degrees or higher. When it's 100 degrees or higher, I find that all of my squashes, no matter what kind, even the ones that are super tough, like Tromboncino rapicante and Seminole pumpkin, yes, they are known to be more heat tolerant than others. But that 100 degrees and up is extreme, and barely anything except for like super tropical stuff are happy growing like that. And so what I find is like the plants will kind of stop growing, and they just kind of almost like they go in a hibernation, almost like I'm going to freeze for a little bit until the temperatures cool down later, like towards fall. And then they'll start like growing more and producing and all that. Like they can't even like produce flowers that will turn into fruit because of that extreme heat. So you could plant it now. Just know it's going to grow a little bit and probably stop growing and freeze for a little bit before it will produce something for you later when it cools down. Or you can wait. My sweet spot through years of experimenting, and I talk about this in another video that I just released about growing summer squash. My sweet spot for hot climate gardeners is to direct sow seeds for all types of squash, whatever kind you want, winter or summer squash, 2 weeks before your last spring frost date. Yes, before. Because that gives you a massive jump start on the season. They will grow when temperatures are a little more like mild and consistent. You will get to harvest everything out before the extremes of summer comes. And also with the extremes of summer comes all the pests and diseases. So this year, I direct sowed all my squashes 2 weeks before my last winter frost date. So that was at the end of January for me. And I'm done with them. Like, it's May. I know a lot of the rest of the country is just getting started with it, which is fine if you don't live in an area with extreme summer heat. Now's the time for you to plant these things. But I'm done. Pulled all my plants out. I'm done harvesting, all of that kind of thing. And I grew them with virtually no pests or diseases by doing that. Now, I know if you direct sow seeds for anything, 2 weeks before your last spring frost date, you can anticipate you're probably going to get another cold front or two. I definitely do here in Florida. So I just covered those little seedlings. They were small, right? They were newly germinated with something to protect them from the cold if and when those cold fronts come. And so I only had to do that like twice. No big deal. And that gave me a massive jump start. Harvested, grew everything with virtually no pests or diseases. And I'm done. And also another thing to consider, I don't know if you deal with nematodes, root knot nematodes specifically. A lot of southern gardeners deal with this pest in the soil. It's a microscopic worm. It eats the roots for virtually anything, even grass and weeds. It's a problem for southern gardeners because it doesn't get cold enough here during our winters to kill off this pest in the soil. So if you don't manage that, it can get out of control to the point where you can't grow anything anymore. So very awful thing to have. There's no like real treatment for it and that kind of thing. So I find the root knot nematodes, the few instances that I've had it in my garden, is always some kind of squash. Sometimes my tomatoes, very rarely maybe a pepper plant here and there. So far, because there's a lot of different species of root knot nematodes or just nematodes in general, and they prefer like different kinds of plants. But in general, that's what I've seen. So I've made the decision not to grow squash during the summer in my garden because the summertime is when the nematodes are at their peak. They love the heat, the warmth, the water, all that stuff. So I don't want to be growing crops that are magnets for them during the summer, if that makes sense. You're making the situation so much worse. So that's another reason why I grew all of my squash type stuff early on. So if nematodes aren't an issue for you, you might be fine, in Phoenix, in Arizona or whatever. I don't know if they exist there, maybe. Or the extreme heat, use some shade cloth, 40% shade cloth, maybe that'll help. But it's just any kind of crop for me that if I plant it during the summer and it just kind of freezes because it's so hot and it's not really doing anything, is now really just a magnet for a bunch of pests and diseases. So I also just don't want to have it in my garden at that time. I'll wait for the appropriate time of the year to plant them so I don't have any of those problems. All right. Hemingway says, I'm in Orlando. Will my cowpeas and long beans grow completely if I just planted them last week? Yes. Yes, they will, because cowpeas and yard long beans, those are like, I call them like the tropical version of beans, right? So I will grow all my regular green beans, bush beans, that kind of thing during the spring and fall. But when it comes to summertime, I will transition over to super tropical substitutes of things. So the cowpeas and yard long beans are my tropical substitute for anything green bean. They like the heat, they like the rains, they will produce great for you. That is what the bean type of crop that you can plant right now. And you can virtually plant those like the whole summer, really, if you wanted to. Marshmallow saying my strawberry mint is not growing. Any tips? I actually don't know what strawberry mint is. I mean, there's a million different kinds of mint. There's like chocolate mint and pineapple mint and all that. So I'm going to assume it's just another variety or cultivar of regular mint. Marshmallow, I don't know where you're located, but what I've found in my garden, this is my experience. I know not all Florida gardeners or hot climate gardeners experience this, but anytime that I plant mints out in my garden, they like die off during the summer. They don't like the extreme heat like that and that kind of thing, I found for my garden. But mint is famously known for spreading all over the place in other gardens, other types of climates where maybe it's just a little more like milder temperate, not extreme. But I've found like mints do not like the extreme heat and the extreme sun of being put outside in a extremely hot climate. Again, not sure where you're located, but that is my problem with all mints. So that is what I'm going to assume maybe is going on with your strawberry mint, if it hasn't like taken off and taken over by this point. Other than that, they're super easy to grow. So my mints, I grow in containers and that kind of thing. And I actually just brought them in. It's in this screen porch right across from me right now, so that it's in some shade and it's a little cooler, and it'll make it through the summer before I like move it back outside. But that's the only issues that I've personally had with mint. Sorry, scrolling through the comments here. I would say Tromboncino rapicante compared to an Armenian cucumber in regards to heat tolerance. I think the Armenian cucumber can handle it just a little bit better than the Tromboncino. Even like my Seminole pumpkins, they even like kind of shut down and stop flowering and all of that during the summer. So I think you'll have better luck with the Armenian cucumbers at this point. Okay, Anjali, I hope I said your name right. Sorry if I didn't. You're in South Texas. No question's a dumb question. I'm happy to answer anything. But how do I know my determinate tomatoes are done producing? They don't look dead. They are very green, but not flowering anymore. Okay, so unlike what a lot of people think, determinate tomatoes will produce for you again. So when you grow an indeterminate tomato, they're famously known because they will flush a set of fruit, grow some more, flush some more, grow some more, flush some more, and you just get like multiple harvests out of them before the plant just like dies, right? And that is absolutely true about indeterminates. Determinates do the same thing, just not as much, but you will get like subsequent harvests if you just let it sit there. It's like it takes a break. Like it will produce a flush, you'll harvest all that, it takes a break, and it looks like it's not doing much or growing or anything, and then all of a sudden it'll start putting on new growth and another flush of fruit. It's just not as frequent as like what you get with the indeterminate stuff. So I wouldn't like yank it out or give up on it or that kind of thing. However, we are entering extreme heat of summer, which shuts down all the tomatoes too. Once temperatures start getting at night, it's very specific. Nighttime temperatures get above, I think it's 90 or 95 degrees Fahrenheit. The tomato plants can't hold on to flowers anymore. They start dropping them, and then you get no fruit or any kind of production. So when that starts happening in my garden, that's when I terminate my tomato crops or plants and pull them all out. I actually just finished doing that right now. I gutted out my whole tomato side because I know they're not going to produce nothing for me during the summer. I've been harvesting from them since September of last year. So I grow mine in September through fall, winter, the next year's spring, and then by this point I'm like done because it's just way too hot. And yeah, you could leave that plant there. It's just going to be like stunted and unhappy. If it makes it through the summer, it'll continue growing and producing again when temperatures drop in fall. However, those tomato plants are magnets for all sorts of pests and diseases. If they sit there during the summer, they're going to catch all of them and just, it can't produce for you, can't make anything for you besides just catch all these diseases. So that's why I gut out my garden at this point and like take them all out, remove them. That is how I kind of control pests and diseases in my garden. So just something to think about. And depending on how long you've been growing that plant, tomatoes, as they get older, they also decline in production. And at some certain point, it's just better for you to restart with new plants. So I don't know how hot it gets in South Texas. I actually lived in South Texas, in Galveston, for 3 years. And I gardened there as well. And it did get super hot, but it wasn't as hot as like what I get here in Florida. So it was a little bit different there. We were able to grow like some tomatoes during the summer and that kind of thing. But it just depends. Depends where you're located and how hot it's going to get. Marilyn's asking if I've ever used an Oya. Great idea. I should have added that to my list when I was saying all the different kinds of methods and things you can use to catch water. I completely forgot about them. I personally do not use them. But a lot of other gardeners do. The reason why I haven't used them yet is because to me it looks like it's only good for a smaller garden. Like when you put an Oya, the amount of water that gets absorbed and like puts moisture into the surrounding area is small. But that's a great option for a smaller raised bed or containers or that kind of thing, of course. Definitely that would be good for you. But my beds and stuff are larger scale. I have sections that are just in ground gardens. So an Oya for me is not going to do much. For my setup, I prefer drip irrigation in that case. But if you have a smaller garden, definitely Oyas are a great choice. Jackie is asking, how do you know if you have indeterminate or determinate tomatoes? The only way to know really is if you know the name of the cultivar you're growing and you Google search it. Trust me, if you Google that name, you will find out. They're all labeled all over the internet. If it's determinate or indeterminate or whatever it could be. Some are even semi-determinates. They're kind of like in the middle. You've got micro-dwarf tomatoes. You've got dwarf tomatoes. Like there's tons of different kinds. But the only way to know for sure is if you know the name of the cultivar that you're growing and you look it up. After many years of growing tomatoes and you kind of notice like their growth habits and that kind of thing, you might be able, I could probably look at a plant and be like, that's an indeterminate or whatever, because the indeterminates just look more vining. They tend to be much bigger plants. I grow one called Triple L crop, also goes by the name Italian tree tomato, because at the end of my season, those vines are like 25 feet long. Like it's a crazy massive mini tree thing at the end of the season. And I do have seeds for that one on my website, I think, unless they're all gone at this point. But that is definitely a signature key feature of an indeterminate tomato, just massively long vines. The determinates, most of the time a mature determinate gets around 6 feet, something like that, maybe 8 feet, but they don't go like crazy, like the indeterminates. And then you have the dwarfs. Those usually stay around 3 to 4 feet. And most dwarf tomatoes, I can tell just by looking at it, it's a dwarf, because the leaves are like crinkled and really thick and like all real thick, like of a plant, real bushy, thick, crinkled leaves is like a signature thing for those dwarf tomatoes. And then micro dwarfs, they're tiny. They tend to be no more higher than like 12 inches tall in most cases. Oh, you're 5 hours south from Galveston. Okay. Interesting. Well, you're in a little more colder climate than Galveston. Like Galveston doesn't get snow typically, but Houston, which is 1 hour, north of Galveston, more or less, can get snow. So you're even, I'm assuming more north. I don't know where Rio Grande is. I don't know if you mean like going south along the coast or more like past north of like Houston, but yeah, if you're more south on like the globe of Galveston, then you get some intense heat. But if you're more north, it's cooler. You might be okay with your tomatoes. Okay, so what else I was gonna say? All right, so I just wanted to chit chat, continuing on with the class. The IBC tote stuff, or in general, whatever kind of thing you decide to use. IBC totes are really expensive. Like brand new, they're several $100s. So most people will like get a used one off from, I got mine off from Facebook Marketplace for like 40 or 60 bucks, something like that. It was super cheap. But you do need to make sure that it has 2 labels on there. One label will say that it's food safe, like the container itself, the plastic material, whatever, is food safe. And then another label that explains what was previously stored in that IBC tote, the chemical that was stored in there. Is that food safe? You'll want to make sure, okay? If the IBC tote smells like chemicals, do not use that. Do not use that in your garden. So that is just like, I asked the person before I bought it and said, hey, bring it to me or deliver it. I was like, I need to see both of those labels. And they showed them to me. So that's just one thing to look out for. You know what, guys? I think the weather has cleared up a little bit. I might just go out there and actually get to show you guys the IBC tote thing and chit chat about that better than just sitting here. Okay, 1 second. I think someone asked a question before we move here. FN Rob is asking, when do I give up on tomatoes? My flowers are starting to fall off, also Central Florida. So right now is when I give up on my tomatoes because of that very reason. The flowers are starting to fall off. So for Florida, kind of a real good general guideline, or hot climates in general. Tomatoes are not a summer crop for us. That's what I believe. Okay, the thing will just do nothing for you because it's just too hot. So I like to sow seeds in early mid-July, indoors only, because it's way too hot outside. The rains are causing diseases to fly all over the place. So if you are sowing seeds outdoors in those kinds of conditions, they're going to catch all sorts of diseases. Pests are going to chew them up, all that, whatever. So I will only sow those seeds indoors. And I have YouTube tutorials showing one specific just about sowing seeds for tomatoes, but July is when I'm going to start doing that. Then I will transplant them out in the garden, usually by the end of August or early September, depending on if we have a hurricane going on or whatever is happening. Usually my deadline for transplanting them for a fall crop is Labor Day weekend. Like by then I've got them all in the ground. So then they will grow for me all fall. I will be harvesting a whole bunch of stuff. Usually I harvest up until around Christmas time is usually when we get our first like cold front. And then that doesn't kill my tomato plants, but it definitely shuts them down for a little bit. They'll stop growing and producing and all that until things start to warm back up again in spring. Usually at the end of January and February, they'll start growing some more, producing some more, the same plants, right? So you can literally grow like 9 months in a row. Now it's starting to rain. I was just about to go out there, but now it's raining. I'm sorry, guys. I really like to like show you guys the garden, not just sit here and chit chat, but it's not gonna happen today. I can tell already. But anyways, you can grow tomatoes 9 months in a row if you do that. I will also sow more seeds for tomatoes indoors in December to transplant mid or like January 20th, something around there, into the garden for like another spring crop if I want to hurry up and like grow some more and harvest some more. So that's the 2 times that I will do that. That's a really good way to get it done. But yeah, then by May, usually I don't see the flowers dropping and all of that until June. I'm convinced that the heat has come early this year. Summer is like already started. It's disgusting outside. It's like 90s and we're getting a lot of rain. Like I know we're still in our like dry season, but we don't get like, it's raining today and it was like raining last week, you know, days, and yeah, I don't know. That kind of stuff doesn't usually happen to like middle, end of June. So I feel summer came early for us this year, which is very disappointing because it's very hard to garden at this time. But yeah, when you see those tomato flowers starting to drop, that's a good indicator that you're done. Like, pull them out. They're just going to catch a whole bunch of diseases and stuff like that. Oh, thank you guys. I see all your sweet comments. Nothing makes me happier than to know that other people are being affected in a positive way by this information that I put out all over the place and are being successful and enjoying gardening as much as I do. That is like the best feeling in the world. I want to like quit my other random full-time job so I can go full-time into this because I feel like it's actually making a difference for people. It'll happen one day. Eventually I'll get there. But knowing that this stuff is helping you guys is, it makes my day. Just knowing that. So thank you. When do I restart tomatoes for fall? Okay, so 2 times of the year where I will sow tomato seeds indoors. This is for Florida people, Central Florida, mostly. Early mid-July, I will sow the seeds indoors with intent to transplant at the very end of August, maybe that first weekend of September. That's for the fall crop. Then I will sow some more seeds indoors only in early mid-December to transplant out towards the end of January, around there, for your like spring crop, so to speak. Okay, I don't know if it's missing some things. Okay, I guess I'm caught up with the questions. Let me see if I had any more. I always have like an outline for these classes because I hate like forgetting something. You know, you guys take the time out to come here and be in this class and watch me and stuff. So I like to make sure that it's full of all the information you guys need. So that's why I always have an outline. But the last one I wanted to touch on a little bit, and it might be repeating some of the other things, but someone did ask me about, you know, they have a community garden where they don't have access to a well water or city water. Like what can you do in those situations? So you're going to have to capture rainwater somehow, like regardless, you're going to have to. Or you can learn and get really, really good at choosing certain crops and planting them at like the best time of year that they will naturally grow with the given rainfall that you get naturally in your area. But that can be really hard to do, and that's definitely going to limit the variety of stuff that you can grow. Like as an example, fruit trees and like fruiting shrubs and bushes and stuff like that are really good for these types of scenarios, because once you plant, I mean, initially you're going to have to make sure they stay nice and watered as a young plant until they get established, and then they're okay on their own. They will get the natural rainwater cycles in your area and be fine. Like mature avocados and mangoes and pineapples are a great choice too. So maybe start trying to develop more and go into more like food, forest, permaculture type setups where you're dealing more with perennial edible native crops that are going to do well regardless of your watering situation. So I would try to like establish that, or make sure you have portions of your garden that are like that, instead of just annual row crops that are going to require like consistent water. Another idea, I mean, we grow yucca, cassava, and pigeon peas, moringa, sweet potatoes even. I have some of it here, but the majority of it is at my aunt's property since she has much more space. But those things, like once you plant them, they get established and they are totally fine with the natural rainwater that we get here in Florida too. But those are definitely much more bigger crops that take up a lot of space. Yeah, another idea is using oyas. I guess I did have it here somewhere on my class notes. Oyas, or buried clay pots, or some kind of slow releasing water system that would again take advantage of some rainwater. You can reuse gray water if you have that from kitchens, showers, your laundry. Obviously, if you're going to reuse gray water, you got to make sure it's not like full of chemicals or soap or like whatever stuff like that. I believe Epic Garden, the Epic Gardening channel, I'm sure you all follow him. I've been following him since like way when he started, and it's amazing to see like where his channel has gone. So I'm a huge fan. Okay, I'm a huge fan of his stuff. But I do remember his property that he lives on now, he did install some kind of system to collect the gray water from his shower, which I thought was really, really cool. So you know, you can do stuff like that. Using deep mulch and cover cropping to retain moisture is going to be really, really important for you in those situations. Get those free wood chips if you can and use that as mulch. Cover cropping. So you can use like sweet potatoes, cowpeas, like things that kind of stay more close to the ground. And plant those up in between your crops so that the vines, the leaves, that kind of thing will like fill in all the area and provide shade to the soil beneath it and keep it cooler. Also help trap in moisture. So yeah, you never want to leave soil bare. If you leave soil bare, it gets baked by the sun, the heat, all of that. It causes erosion, like all sorts of stuff. So, and more water loss. So definitely cover the soil surfaces if you can with preferably live plants of some sort or cover crop. You can try to garden more in partial shade or use shade cloth to reduce water loss, and you know, timing your crops to the rainy season and making sure that you're planting during times when water is just more naturally available. Other than that, you're gonna have to get like things to catch rainwater. You don't need a gutter system, but you'll have to have like funnels and like different things just to catch the rainwater. But like here in Florida, like I need water. I don't have, well, except for like the perennial edible stuff, those are okay on their own, and I don't irrigate them. They're not attached to irrigation systems or nothing like that. But like for, you know, during the dry season, the annuals would die. Like my annual crops and tomatoes, whatever, peppers, those would die if I did not give them some sort of water. Like they're not going to take that very well. So, and I don't know if you have access to a pond, but you can get pumps and different things to utilize that pond water as well. So those are your options. You know, they're not the most easiest things, I guess. You definitely have to build something if you're gardening out in the middle of nowhere and you have no access to like well water or city water. But if you want to garden and you really want it to like thrive and you know, whatever, you're gonna have to set up something. All right, let me look back at the comments and then we will be wrapping up this class. Usually my classes are an hour. Definitely went over that. But it's okay. I enjoy answering all your questions and just chit-chatting about this stuff. 1 second while I scroll back up and get caught up with the chat and stuff. Joey's asking who wins in a fight, Everglades tomatoes or sweet potatoes. They're both equally very tough plants. The only thing is, like, Everglades tomatoes I find that are growing in full sun do shut down during the summer from the high heat. That's why I like to plant them actually in a spot that gets partial shade, and they will do much better. But both of them are going to continue producing for you in the high heat. Everglades tomatoes, they are small, but those things produce a ton. So comparing like volume or like weight of what you might harvest from an Everglades tomato versus a sweet potato. Yeah, sweet potatoes are big tubers, but unless you plant a whole bunch of them, you're not gonna get like a ton of tubers. So even by weight, that's a hard decision to make. I love them both. So I'm not gonna choose. No one's gonna win on there. It's an equal. Bobby says she has a volunteer tomato. South Florida summers doesn't cause the flowers to fall. That is awesome. I wish that was my case here. You know, Florida has so many microclimates. Like you can be more south of me and maybe just have a cooler microclimate or whatever's going on, where your tomatoes are fine and make it through the summer. Unfortunately for me, I've not had that except for the Everglades tomatoes in partial shade, but. Jackie says, can you plant your sweet potato slips? You're an 8B. Yeah, I would say so. You still have time. If you have, depends on the variety you're growing. Most of them are Yeah, most sweet potatoes you can start harvesting, they all say around the 90-day mark. But I find every time that I've ever tried to harvest them at around 90 days, they're small. Like they're just too small. And it's not worth all the work of like digging them out and all of that for these little tubers. So I prefer to leave them in like sometimes 5 or 6 months so they get really big, making that harvest and all that work more worth it in my opinion. So if you have minimum 3 months left before your first winter frost, then you still have time to grow sweet potatoes. If you have even more time, 4 or 5 months, then you definitely are okay, and you could still be planting slips right now. Cajun Nanny is asking, when I catch the rainwater, do you have to cover it? So I caught some and put it in jugs, but it turned green, and I'm like, oh yes. And I'm not sure if that's good for plants. That you brought up a very good point. So no matter what thing you're using to catch or collect or store water, green algae is going to be a problem. And there's actual strains of green algae that are toxic to humans. So, and I talk about this in my video that went live yesterday about how I installed my IBC tote system. So green algae will grow wherever there's enough like sunlight. Like that's how it grows. It needs that sunlight. So you have to block out that sunlight. In the example of an IBC tote, a lot of people will paint them black, cover them in black plastic. In my case, I found these like zip up bag things that are black that are made to cover IBC totes, and they were only like 25 bucks. So I was like, that is so much easier for me, than painting and whatever. And you just slip it over the IBC tote and zip it, and it's blocked out, and that green algae cannot grow. So whatever container you're using, you will have to make sure that no light can get into like the water or whatever, or the green algae will grow, and that'll be a problem. And it's not easy to clean that stuff from the inside of a container. Definitely not easy to clean that from the inside of an IBC tote. So that's what happened there. And that also brings to mind the fact that also whenever you're collecting water that is open outside, mosquitoes can be a problem, and nobody wants that, right? They'll lay their eggs in the water and that kind of thing. So you have to make sure that all potential openings where your pieces are joining and all that kind of stuff are properly sealed, that no mosquitoes can get in there, and preferably at every opening location, some kind of filters. And so my IBC tow system has 2 filters, one at the very top that will filter out the bigger particles, leaf and all that stuff, and then it goes into a smaller fine mesh filter that is at the opening of the IBC tote, so nothing can get in there really. And then my thing filled up with rain that we got over the course of 2 days, so I just disconnected everything and I closed it shut. And that's how I made my system, just real easy. Disconnected it and closed it shut. When I needed more water, I will reconnect everything together and do it again. A lot of people have nice systems where it has an overflow feature. So if once the tank gets full, if there's more rain coming, it will just flow out over the overflow. That's nice. I wish I was more handy and I could have had built something like that, but you typically need PVC pipes and stuff like that to make things like that. And I didn't want to fuss with it. And I find for people like me that don't really know much about tools and building and fixing stuff, when the project isn't easy, you get frustrated and you end up not doing it because you're how am I gonna cut PVC? How am I gonna glue it together? What if I cut it wrong? All these what ifs prevent you from making something. You just need something that works. So that's why I went with mine, and I used the rain gutter extensions. I can open it, close it, and I get the same results, right? The end result is you collected some water you can use to irrigate your garden. So but yeah, if you can have an overflow feature, that's really awesome. Some people have a second filter type of setup where the rainwater will come through the gutter, drop down into usually a PVC pipe. So like the bigger particles will fill that up first and get stuck in there before it continues filling up, and then it goes into your IBC tote or rainwater collection system, whatever. And that's nice to have too, but with that type of filter, and then you just open the bottom of it to clean it out every now and then. Mine doesn't have that, but I also just have the two filters, one for the big particles, one for the fine mesh, like finer particles, and that has been working great. The water in the IBC tote is clear, no debris, nothing like that. But yeah, so those are some things that came to mind. Let me scroll through the comments. Discovery Youth Gardens, is starting seeds outdoors in trays okay, or starting indoors under grow lights better? I'm also in Central Florida. Okay, so I, for the most part, do not sow seeds outdoors because of the extreme conditions that exist outside in Florida. And I'm sure, anywhere. It doesn't have to be just Florida. But if there's rain, that rain will transfer diseases all over the place. If it's hot, it can stunt the growth of the seedlings, especially cool weather crops. Like, that's impossible to sow cool weather crops outdoors in the heat. They'll get stunted, they won't grow right, all that kind of stuff. Or it might be too cold outside. Whatever the case, or there's a lot of pests outside that will find your seedlings and chew them up, especially if you're growing like squash and cucumbers. I have tried sowing seeds for squash and cucumbers in this screened patio, and those pickle worms or whatever worms always find them, and they start chewing the leaves of those baby seedlings, and they just overnight get chewed up. So because of that, I will therefore sow my seeds indoors. And I know that that's hard for a lot of people. You don't have space inside to be sowing seeds or whatever. But you're going to have a lot of seedling loss. They're going to get contaminated with diseases and pests even before you have a chance to plant them outside. So for me, sowing seeds indoors, being able to control the environment, avoid all of those issues, and grow really nice, healthy transplants is an absolute must. So I will, a simple setup, you can go on Amazon, or even I've seen at Aldi's sometimes, they have these mini greenhouses for $30, and it just has a couple shelves. Just find some unused corner in your house temporarily, or maybe in your garage. But right now the garages even are getting really, really hot, unless you have AC in there or something. But then you can get some lighting. I always recommend supplemental light. A lot of people, one of the biggest mistakes is they'll put their seedling trays up against a sunny window or something. I guarantee you a sunny window is not going to be enough light for that seedling. For example, tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, these are full sun crops. They need 8 hours or more of full sun to grow and function properly. I guarantee you any window in your house is not going to give full 8-hour sun to those seedlings. So probably the biggest game changer for me was adding supplemental light. I started with shop lights, which are just, they usually come in 2-foot lengths or 4-foot lengths. There's another airplane. I don't know if you guys hear these airplanes, but super loud. Shop lights. You can get them real cheap at Walmart or Harbor Freight for $20. And you zip tie them to the bottom of the shelf, and then you put your seedling tray in there. The biggest game changer for me was when I upgraded from using shop lights to official grow lights. Shop lights, make sure you get 5,000 Kelvin or the daylight range or above, just more brighter. But grow lights are much more intense, much more brighter, and they also have more of a range of light colors that the plants need to just really just thrive. They're so much more healthier. They grow faster. It cut down my growing time. My tomatoes used to take me 12 weeks indoors with shop lights, and it reduced it to 6, maybe 8 weeks with grow lights. So I will always say go with grow lights if you can. But that is why I recommend indoor sowing as much as possible. Especially right now. It's too extreme outside in Central Florida right now to be sowing transplants and starts outside, unless it's some super tropical thing like loofah. But even right now, I'm about to direct sow seeds for a bunch of different loofah varieties. There's no reason why I would be starting them from seed in a container at this point, if that makes sense. FN Rob asked, where did I find my IBC totes? So I had mentioned that I got it used from Facebook Marketplace. Trust me, you probably could find a ton of used ones locally, real cheap. I can't remember if it was $40 or $60. And that's the route to go, because brand new ones are like several $100s. Make sure though, if you get a used one, that it has 2 labels on there. The first one is like a little one that says the container itself, the material, the plastics, whatever, are food grade. And then another label that tends to be much bigger that explains what chemical was previously stored in there, because you want to make sure that that is also food safe or non-toxic and that kind of thing. Mine was holding glycerin, like vegetable glycerin previously, so that is completely food safe. I would not buy a tote unless it has those 2 labels on there. Julianne's asking, how long will it take my shampoo ginger to get cones? This will be its 3rd year. It should be flowering by now, but they do take a couple years, but usually with mine, like 2 years is what I see. But mine are growing like in absolute, their ideal condition is this subtropical climate that I have here. But shampoo gingers are grown, they're not grown from seed, they're propagated from pieces of the rhizome. The rhizome looks very similar to ginger, like culinary ginger that you use in your kitchen. So when you propagate this thing, you usually cut pieces of the rhizome and you propagate it, and it grows its own, like it sprouts and grows from there. That rhizome system has to be mature enough, big enough to support that blooming and like flower production. So if it's not going to start flowering. You can try to like fertilize it just to help it like grow more. You know, it's the rhizome, its roots, that's really important at this point, just to get that more established and bigger, so that it will start outputting the blooms. Oh, that's a good idea. Patty explaining how her husband made an overflow for the rain barrel by just sticking a hose in there. Yeah, I mean, there's a million ways. I'm probably overthinking it, and I could easily as well just drill like a little hole and put a hose at the very top of the IBC tote, so when it fills to that level, it'll come out. But mine, I detached it. Mine is absolutely full right now, so I just detached it and I'm good to go. Sonia's asking, what preparations do I do to preserve the garden prior to a hurricane? I actually have a video from last hurricane season where I went through like everything that I was doing, because there's a lot of things you can do. The last thing that you want to worry about when you hear a hurricane's coming your way is also, on top of like prepping your house and your family, is the garden. So actually, you guys probably all know I do a monthly garden guide every month. And then there's the garden task tips reminders video. June, because that's the start of hurricane season. In that video, I talk about hurricane preparation, because that's when I start like doing it. But basically, you're going to want to trim down whatever you can, because all of that can become flying debris. You're going to want to harvest whatever seeds are out there. If you save your own seed, harvest out herbs. Or like moringa, because I grow a lot of moringa and I harvest the leaves to dry. And I say that because when those winds come through, they absolutely shred up like plants, right? They'll shred up my moringa leaves, my herbs and stuff. I'll lose all the leaves. So I like to harvest all that stuff, process it in my house, dry it, whatever I'm going to do with it before a hurricane comes. Harvest what you can. Remove like anything that can become a projectile or move, or that isn't like secured in some kind of way. So like patio furniture, tables, tarps, like whatever stuff like that, bring it all down, take it down. If you have any like trees that have like weak limbs or trunks, or maybe it's a newer fruit tree that has a thinner trunk that you're afraid might snap, I will get like a T-post and pound it in the ground next to it, and then use like, I think it's called parachute cord, and like wrap it around a little bit to like stabilize it and make sure it doesn't break. And that's pretty much all you can do. Remove things from areas on your yard, your property that flood. Usually when I'm planting stuff in the garden during knowing it's going to be there growing whatever during hurricane season, I will also consider planting those things in raised beds or containers or grow bags, because I do have lots of portions of my property that does flood, like definitely past my ankles sometimes, like that much water. So I find that the things planted in ground can easily get root rot if that happens. But if it's in a raised garden bed or a container or something like that, the drainage is so much more better and it just quickly drains and I don't lose a lot of my crops. But like my fall tomatoes, all those leaves get shredded up, destroyed. I had a really hard time with it. Like last fall was a horrible a horrible time for my fall tomatoes, because we got hit by like two hurricanes. I forget the names of them. We left for one of them because we thought it was going to be like category 4. I left to New York for that time. I was like, I'm not going to deal with this. I thought it was going to be like Charlie. If anyone was here during Charlie, that was like 2004 or 2005. That's all you can do to prep the garden. So, and then those of you, I don't know where exactly you're located, but if you're on the coast, I'm fortunate to be more inland. We get flooding, but it's nowhere near like what people on the coast experience with the ocean water like coming through and just wiping everything out. Like that is insane. I can't even picture what that's like, because I've not been through that personally. But if you have that much water, like your garden is probably gone, except for maybe like older trees with like root systems like that. But like what can you do? Like I honestly don't know how people on the coast and stuff like garden like that. I don't know, that's tough. Or beachfront properties and stuff like that. But you do the best that you can. All right, guys, I'm gonna call it quits for today. Next month, I'm continuing. I don't know the date yet for the garden class for June, but it is going to be about drip irrigation, like the systems with drip lines and drip tape and all of that, emitters and what I use and that kind of thing. Today's class was about like rainwater and catching it and using it and stuff like that. So that's what we will continue on with next month. As we go into the summer, doing these classes get really hard because the weather is just awful. It rains almost every day during the summer with bad lightning and whatever stuff. Sometimes it's so hot my phones overheat and it just shuts off, and I've had that happen before in a class. So I try my best. We'll try. I'm probably going to push the time of the class, maybe starting next month. Today was starting at 5 p.m. Eastern time. I'll probably push the next one to 6 p.m. Eastern, so it's just more cooler in the day. I try, right? We adjust the times of things and whatever to try. Anyways, real quick before we end, just some last reminders. To know if, future upcoming classes, when those are happening. I do post all over social media and stuff like that, but if you're not there at that moment, you're going to miss the notice. So make sure you join my email group, and I'll put a link in the description of this class. I had to restart the class, so it didn't save from the old one. I'm going to delete the old one and copy and paste all the links of the supplies and things, my email group, all this stuff, so you guys can easily find it. Just give me a few minutes here. I have to go and fix everything. But all the supplies and things that I mentioned in this class will be listed in the description in a few minutes, including how to join the email list so you get the notification of when the next class will be, the time and date and stuff like that. Right now, for Memorial Day, I'm doing a plant sale. Buy one, get the second 50% off. So take advantage of that to stock up on lots of perennial edibles for your gardens. And I will also be at the American Farmstead Convention coming up this Saturday, May 31st. It's actually the first time I've ever been at an event with a booth. I'll have seeds and plants there. Make sure if you're there that you come by and say hi, stop by and chit chat with us. Just thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight and talking about gardening. So if you guys have any questions that maybe I missed or didn't answer or something, feel free to email me at info@jarasgarden.com. All right, guys. Well, I hope you all have a great rest of your evening.